Good. Okay. Kobe, would you mind come sitting over here, please? And
what pair?
if you could just move a little bit this way, you stay that way. Okay, otherwise I can't see you clearly because it's in the way.
Pair base?
All right. So this is Shir in Sefer Tanya, Perek Beis, and we'll be dealing with some of the passages on page 12, Omid 12 of the Sefer. And today is today is Yud Gimel early Yud Daled Teves Toshin Ayin Beis. All right, so we saw that the Alter Rebbe taught us that all neshamas of the whole Klal Yisrael all derive from Kaviyachol, the Moyach of the Eibishter, and we saw that was the Madrega of Chochmei Loa, and therefore the neshama is nimshach mipnimius ve'atzmius of the Eibishter. And we based it on the pasuk in reference to Adam Arishan, that man danofach va'yifach be'apov nishmas chayim, a man danofach miteichei nofach. And we look inside the Sefer. Okay, and we saw different Nakudas Benegel there, and the whole arichas of the Hagua, and the inyanim that were mistayef that came out from that. However, the Alter Rebbe asked a shaila that if all neshamas derive from one essential level, which is the level of Etzem Elakus Chochmei Loa, Hu v'Chochmasei Echad, that the Rebbe is mamish one with his Chochma, and therefore, as it were, all neshamas are a chelik Elokah mimail. As how come we find both in the span of the generations and of history, and in every generation, every period in which any given individual is born, that there are immense differences in what we might call the quality and content of the neshamas. If they all come from one essential point, then there shouldn't be differences of content and quality in the neshamas. And if there's already going to be differences, then the higher a person is, or what appears to be a higher neshama, but that should have a higher shoyresh and a higher level in Elakus, in the Olamas Reinim, and particularly in Olam Atzilus. That's Mishyached with Elakus. And those who are not so high neshamas, and they don't have such a high power and chush in ruchnias, then they should be l'chayra from a lower level. So how do we explain the immensity of difference that there is in neshamas, both in the span of history, and that's what we were holding. That we were holding basically by that shaila on page 12. And we saw v'chein b'kol der, but that's the third line down. And in every generation, Yesh Roshei Alpha Yisrael. There are the heads, literally, of the thousands of the Yidden. Well, that's a way of referring to the great leaders of the Jewish people, the great teachers and Rabbanim, and Poiskim and guiders of the Jewish people. Shenishma Yiseihem, what their neshamas, Heim B'chinas Reish U'Moyach, Legabe neshamas ha'hamon ve'amei ha'oretz. What in each given generation, the leaders and the spiritual guiders and leaders of the generation, they're like the Indian of the head and the moyach, compared to the neshamas of the ordinary people. Hamon meaning the general run of simple people, and even lower than that, amei ha'oretz, even people who are not gifted with knowledge of Torah B'Klal. So obviously they are a much lower level in spirituality than the Rosh Alpha Yisrael. V'chein is doch Ebazai, that makes even more specific the general kasha. How come we have all these differences in the neshamas if they all come from one essential point? V'chein nefoshes lagabe nefoshes. And the same with the level which is called nefesh. And here we use it in the plural, lagabe nefoshes, lagabe all the other nefeshes. Ki kol nefesh, in a general way, each soul, here we mean nefesh in a general sense, klula is made up and include of nefesh, ruach, unishoma. Each general soul in its generality is made up and includes within itself three specific levels, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And as one on, and considers in many places, that the level of neshama is the higher level of the revealed aspect of the neshama. Now these three levels are usually referred to as naran. Brought down and considers a Rosh Tevis, nefesh, ruach, neshama. And neshama is tied to the koiches of the brain and the moyach and the higher abilities to appreciate Lakus in the revealed koiches of the soul. We're not talking here about the essential part of the nefesh. And neshama is tied to moyach, and particularly to understanding, which is bina. However, the level of ruach is tied more to the leiv. It's got a direct connection with the union of feeling, emotion, and what we call midas, which are all Ike inyonim is the heart, but they are shayat to ruach. In other words, that the makim where ruach dwells within the general makeup of the neshama is more in the heart. But the nefesh is the third madrega. It's shy of more to Maisa B'Poel. We see that the ability to bring out into activity and to express things in Maisa B'Poel, and the concept of just being very simple and undeveloped in your thinking abilities and your feeling ability, that you just accept, and you in a state of what we call hoidua, acceptance and admittance to the Eibishter. All of those levels are shaykh in nefesh. And that's the third level. So now, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is the difference that occurs in every generation, or in all the generations, if we take the span of history, in neshamas, is on not just on the level of neshama, on the higher level, that there are people who are very high intellectual, gifted people in the study of, for example, of Torah and Talmud, and then you have people who are more shy to feeling, and people who are more shy to lower levels. It's not just in a general way that we can say that, but on each individual level of the neshama, there are also tremendous multifarious differences. Now, we could suggest that with that the Alter Rebbe wants to multiply and make more multifarious the whole difference that there are between people and between different individuals in the makeup of the generation or in the historical span of the generation. But we can suggest that he's warning with that the Alter Rebbe that since the madrega of nefesh is a much more simple, connected level of the neshama to the body, in particular, it's connected with action, not within the intellectual or emotional experience, then I might have thought that on that level everybody's more or less the same. And we do find when it comes to, for example, to mitzvahs, then all Yidden are exactly the same. Everybody has to put on tefillin exactly the same as what the other Yid does. And I might have thought, or other actions which are shayat to Torah and to the kiyum of the mitzvahs, particularly in action, as I might have thought that on the level of nefesh, being as it is, a much more simplified, a much more undeveloped level, that maybe there everybody can be considered more or less the same. And therefore the Alter Rebbe points out that on all three levels of the neshama, there's tremendously multifarious differences from one individual to the other, one group to the other, and one type to the other within each generation, how much more so, as we said, in the whole span of history. And that exists on all three levels of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. In other words, if we take the great person, that he's the Rosh Alpha Yisrael, that he's beyond and higher than other people in the generation, even on the pula of Nefesh, even on the simple level where he just shy to action, there's a difference in quality and in spiritual potential and power in what he does as compared to a less spiritually emphasized person. And therefore there's an old saying by the Hasidim that a Rebbe and a great leader, somebody who's a great Torah teacher and figure, that even if he moves his finger from one place to the other, or he makes a sign, or he smiles, or he does other inyanim which have got to do with the simple action of the body, that's also got a tremendous meaning in it, and is of significance to all those who happen to be around him at that particular moment. And as they say, a wave of a hand from a Rebbe can do a lot more than what reading in 50 books might do for you, etc. In other words, that your powers of spirituality and reading Sforim and Oid Inyanim, it might only take you to a certain linear. But if you're connected in some way, when I say connected, if you experience just a wave of the hand from a Rebbe, or another gesture of some nature which was made in a deliberate way towards you, then that can be a tremendous effect, indicating that even on the level of nefesh, there's also tremendous differences between people. As in Cain, we have then the basic question: how can we say that everybody is all a and everybody's a piece of the Eibishter Kaviyah, a piece of the simplicity of the Eibishter? Everybody's different. So the big ones have got a big level, the lower ones have got a lower level. So now begins the Alter Rebbe the answer to the question. He says, Mikol Mokim, nonetheless, Shoyresh Kol Nefesh Ruach Unishama, the Shoyresh of all the Nefeshes, all the Madregas of Nefesh, of Ruach, and of Neshama, Kulam Meiresh Kol Hamadregas, Ad Sof Kol Dargin, Malubish Beguf Amei Ha'oretz, Bekal Shebekalim. Nonetheless, he said, the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama of all Yidden, from the highest Madregas down to the soft cold Dargin. Now, it's interesting that he begins the expression with a purely Lashon Kodesh expression, Mireish Kol HaMadregas, from all of the levels, Ad Seif Kol Dargin. And Dargin is an Aramic word. It's like a slight different nuance. I think hinting at that some people are only like the Friedrich Rebbe used the famous remark when he came out on Yud Beis Tammuz, that he said that there's some Yidden that they're just called by the name Yidden. They don't really know anything about the Yiddishkeit. All they know is that the Asher B'Shem Yisrael Yechuneh, and their whole connection with Yiddishkeit is they just know that somebody is given birth to them and they are a Yid and they have the name of a Yid. And so that's why we could suggest that he says soft called Dargin. Even the levels which are not levels anymore, really. They're just like levels in Aramaic, in another language, not in Lashon Kodesh. Nonetheless, even those people, what they are, Malubish Begut, and their Nishomes, clothed in the body, let's say, of Amei or of the ignorant people, the people who know nothing very much about learning. Now, Amei Oretz doesn't necessarily mean the people who are against Yiddishkeit or not desiring to keep Yiddishkeit even. Now, Amei Oretz means people that have never really had the privilege of knowing a great deal about Yiddishkeit. Therefore, they're called people that they're shy to the Oretz. They're shy to the earthiness of life. Well, not because they really want to be that way, but then he said it could be that these people, these lower neshamas, malubish not only in, for example, in the bodies of Amei Ha'oretz, but also in those of a person called Kal Sheba Kalim. Now, this is an expression in the Gemara referring to a person who is a easy one amongst the easy ones. In other words, that he's already not keeping. He's light-headed, like a kal. Kal means easy or light or scorning. Legabi most inyonim in Yiddishkeit. Now the chiddush of that expression is that you could call a person a kal. You could say he's just a light-headed, easy-going guy when it comes to Yiddishkeit. But if you call him a kal sheba kalim, you call him, even amongst the kalim, even amongst those who are not from particularly, they say that he's a kal. They say, oh, he's a kal. Kal sheba kalim. In other words, even the kalim consider him to be a kal. Nonetheless, the neshama which melubish in such a guf, nimshak memoyach elyon. Nonetheless, his neshama is also from the brain kaviyochel above. In other words, from chokmah iloah, who chokmah echad. Also from the essential level that we saw earlier, even his neshama is nimshak memoyach elyon, shehi chokmah iloah kaviyochel. So he says that that's also the union of Chokhmah Ilah, the sphere of Chokhmah, how it is in Elam HaTzilas, that is Chokhmah Ilah, like we saw Huva Chokhmah Echad, Aviyocho Kemosho Habein, as it were, like the marshal of a son, Shenimshach Mimayach Ha'or. That we saw that the embryo of the son in the mother's womb comes from the brain of the father. In other words, that the tipor, which is nimshach, the drop, which is nimshach, to give rise to the embryo in the womb of the mother, comes from the brain of the father, as we saw, and that's how we connected it in the marshal with the brain above. Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. We're also children of the Eibishter. Nimshach Mimei Chav, Sha'afilo, says the Rebbe, the Chiddush there is that once that tipper is nimshach from the brain in the moshel, now we're talking in the moshel, from the brain of the father, Sha'afilo Tziponei Raglov, Nisavu Mitipazu Mamish. See, that afilo, the how to call it, feel the nails of your feet, in other words your toenails. I feel the toenails have come about mitipa zu, mami. In other words, the same tipper which produces the higher aspects of the embryo also produces the how to call it, the nails on the toe of the little embryo. They also come from the tipper of the father. In other words, you can't differentiate and say that part of the embryo came from somewhere else. The whole embryo came from the tipper of the father, which means that even the tziponayim at the bottom of his body, on his toes, all came about from that particular drop of semen of the father. Al Yidei, how did that happen? Al Yidei shehi also isha chadoshim bebeten ha'im. Through the fact that this tipper remained literally and spent time of 9 months inside the womb, beten meaning the womb, inside the womb of the mother. Now, that would tend to indicate that the main actual part of the vlad, the thing which makes him what he is, that's from the tipper of the father. But the pu'ula of the mother is that she keeps the embryo 9 months inside her womb, during those 9 months, all sorts of changes take place, which are the development of the embryo. He starts off as a little weenie, the tipper, and he unites with a tipper of the mother, and then he begins gradually to, and that growing and development, or what you might call spreading out process on the part of the embryo, well, that takes 9 months inside the tipper, inside the womb of the mother. V'yordo mi madriga la madriga, and during that 9 months, then this tipper, or at least a certain trace or aspect of that tipper, has gone down from one level to the other. From mi madriga la madriga, lehishtanis ulishavis memeno tziponayim. It's gone down in such a way that it has altered and it's changed, and it has led to a coming into being, lehisavis mimena, and that there should be a capacity for it to produce from itself even toenails. Now, that means that it's a process of what we might call in English, if there's such a word, bodilization, like becoming more bodily, more material and more gashmi. It starts off in a form of almost unnoticeable cells and things like what they connect, and gradually during the 9 months it develops and develops and develops, and it would appear that according to the way the Alter Rebbe is describing it, the higher form of the organs of the mensch, they form earlier. Therefore, we might say that the moyach and the lave and the kovet, how do you call it, the stomach and the kovet and all those things, they form relatively early. But after you've been a long time, then gradually the tipper has gone through a whole series of different shinuim, how do you call it, alterations and gradations, that he's become very, very delicate, albeit bodily things, but they're very high and delicate. And then he's gone down, but it's still the same tipper. The unification is still the same. And what has happened to that tipper that's gone down through these different bodilyizations, as we might call them, and now it's come to even the most outer and less sensitive, and what would appear to be less significant of all of the Evarim, what those are the tzipor, the tziponayim. In other words, you can even cut them, as long as you cut them horizontally, and you don't pull them off from their connection with the body, and they don't seem to react, or they're such a low level that there's no sensitive feeling within them, even if they're exposed to a drastic activity like cutting. But nonetheless, says the Alter Rebbe, what has happened is that they've gone down and become tziponayim, be'im kol zeh. And nonetheless, he says, im kol zeh is an expression in Hebrew meaning just the same. Oidena keshura u'miyuchedes beyichud niflo va'otzum b'mahusa v'atzmusa rishain. Shahoyeso tipes moyach ha'or. So he said, even that aspect of the tipper, which has gone down so far, it's undergone all sorts of different bodily, organic changes from organ to organ and from state to state in bodilization. He said, nonetheless, that aspect of the tipper, which is now actually given rise to the tziponayim, that is still bound up. Or idena keshura, it's still bound up, and miyuchedes, it's one united in a tremendously high form of unity, beyichud niflo, in a most wondrous and tremendous, for otzum, a most wondrous and tremendous unity, yichud niflo, ve'otzum, v'mahuso, ve'atzmuso, horishoin, in its very essence and its very self, that it had at the beginning, In other words, its first and original self. That it was a piece, literally a drop from the Moach HaOv, or that aspect of the Moach HaOv which has given rise to the Tziponayim, is still bound up with tremendous kesher and tremendous, unbelievable oneness and unity with that aspect of it as it was originally the Tippas HaMoach. And there's no difference in that respect between all the Evarim and the Tziponayim. They're all bound up, and they're all just different developments and different expressions and different. Please put that away. I don't want to see that. Otherwise, I'll have to take a very extreme activity of maybe confiscating that from me. I don't want, under any circumstances, that should appear even during the class. Yeah, well, he's not. I don't even permit Rav Bolton to quote it during our class. You just ignore it, okay? And my mother comes out the feast here that what's happened here is just a bodilization and a derivation onto a very low level of something which is really the same thing. And that's why it says it's still keshura umiyuchedet, because keshura means maybe to become something else. But keshura means bound. But if I put in the word miyuchedet and I say biyichud nifla v'otzim, close that, please. Close that. Put that aside completely. Biyichud otzim v'nifla. Well, that intends to imply that it's a tremendous unity, just like it was at the beginning. Biyichud nifla v'otzim. And maybe we could say, why is it a yichud nifla v'otzim? It's a tremendous and enormous unity, because to say that something that's become something else is still really what it was originally, that's a very strong thing. Then you indicate the unity in a much higher way. For example, the Hashem's unity after He brought about the whole creation, and yet nonetheless we're all one with Him. That's a greater chiddush, as it were, and it's a greater expression of His unity than what it is without. I mean, Hashem is one anyway, even if we were never created. But after we're created, and nonetheless we're all united with Him, but that's a great shleimus, and perfection in His unity. So the same way we could say that the Alter Rebbe is saying that even the Tziponai Raglayim are still connected with the Etzem in a yichud otzum, a tremendous and enormous oneness. Meaning this is a indisputable and great oneness, a connection between the two. Shehu shahoyasa tipes moach ha'or. The gam akshov, and even now, the gam akshov, meaning after the son has been born. Yeah, gam akshov, after the son has been born out and he's become an individual of his own. Beven, in the son meaning not an embryo anymore, but a son that's been born out into the world, a living person called a ben. You have to hold your head up. I'm sorry. Listen, I don't have to have problems with you, nothing. But you've got to hold your head up, okay? I don't want you leaning down like that on your hand. If you can't do it, then you've got to leave the show, okay? Okay? Now hold your head up normally, all right? Komt thuis that now the son has been born, he's called a ben. V'gam achshav, that the son has been born, yaniches hatziponayim v'chiyuson nimsheches me'ameach shebereish. And now that he's been born, the life force of the tziponayim comes from the brain. In other words, that contrary to what we might think, that even in every, what that means, baven, actual baven, what that means in every living individual, that the tziponayim gain their chayis and their yaniko. Yaniko means their nurturement, and they're drawing out from, and they're what you might call almost their sucking from. They take from the moya. Now that's an interesting thing. That even in the living ben, after he's become a living human, there's a direct connection between the fingernails of the toes, or the hand for that matter, and the moyach shebaroish. How do we know that? Kedeisa beGemara sham, like it's written there in the Gemara, that loiven shemimenu gidim v'atzomes v'tzipornaim. Now, what does this mean? It's referring to the original Gemara that we bought. Nido Shom. He doesn't write exactly where, because he already bought that Gemara right at the very beginning of the Tanya, when we learned that the embryo, when it's inside the mother's womb, they give it a oath. Kaviyachol, the Bezdin Shalamayla, gives the embryo an oath. So later on, the Gemara goes on to discuss in quite a lot of details the coming out of an embryo out into the world, and different things about the relationship between it and the mother before it's born and then after it's born, etc., etc. So the Gemara says over there that there are three shutofim, how do you call it, three partners in every individual: the mother and the father and the Eibishter. And it says that the Eibishter, he's matil boy neshama. The Eibishter puts the neshama. So, and the Eibishter actually puts the ability for the neshama to understand things. As those brought down there, the Inyan from Seichel, that's even written, your ability to actually move all the Evarim in an ordered way, to walk or to do any other action, also comes from the Eibishter. In other words, that we might call the ruchnistic power, which rules throughout the whole system of the body through the neshama, well, that's all from Hashem. And therefore, it's put down in certain places that if really basically everything's from Hashem. So how can you say there are three partners? A partner means like he's putting something into it. So it's put down in the great Sforim that really everything's from Hashem. He created all the Averim and all the things that everything is from him, not just the neshama. But the mother and the father are what we call Bali Bechira. They had a choice not to bring a child into the world or to bring him. And when we had that choice, then what they give is like a partner. Even though they're not really partners, but mitzvah, and that's, by the way, just that's a hint to this whole business of what they call, I don't want to go into it, and the whole Inyan, the fact that a person has a choice. He can decide whether to have children or whether not. And therefore, in that respect, he's also a shutaf. And anyway, he says the Alter Rebbe, that what's written over there, that there's three shutafim, the mother and the father and the Eibishter. And then it's written that the mother, she gives into the son the what you call it, dam and basar, what you would call the red of the things, more like the flesh and things like that. And the father, he gives the white part. Loiven, that's what the Gemara says. Loiven, he gives the white aspect. Shemimenu gidim, that's where your sinews come from, and atzomes, and your bones. V'tzipor, tzipornayim. A very interesting statement. Gidim, atzomes, and all of a sudden, tzipornayim. So we see that the father, he, as it were, gives the ability for the tzipornayim to be born. To be misava. So the Alter Rebbe's got a clear proof that the tzipornayim come from the father. And where do they come from in the father? From the moyach. So the moyach, the father gave rise to the tipper, and the tipper that goes directly from the father, well, that gives rise to the tzipornayim. Well, the interesting thing is that the Alter Rebbe waits to say that. He's already told me the ben. He said the ben, once your ben has already been born, then his tzipornayim come from the brain. His tzipornayim, right? His day-to-day fingernails or his toenails, or they come from the brain. And then he brings me a Gemara that goes back to when the father's giving birth to her, that from his brain come the tzipornayim. So, we'll see. It seems to be like a a point that could have been made earlier or fitted in at another point. Why did the Alter Rebbe wait till he first of all got the son, and then he brings the Gemara, which is really talking about the father, not about the son? So we have to say, that's just one of these mind-boggling things that occurs in Tanya all the time, that everything's tremendously delicate and tremendously deep, and you got to watch every oyster. So what we suggest that the Alter Rebbe is telling us, what that is, that when you walk around, when you walk around in the world, and you've already grown up, you've already separated out, and you've already become a ben. Doesn't matter how old you are, but you're already a ben. You are really still the moyach of your av. It's not just that the tziponayim that you have grow from your moyach, but they grow from the fact, they grow originally from the fact that you're, and on the contrary, let's put it another way. If your tziponayim come from your moyach, then your moyach comes for sure from the moyach of the father. Matter we're saying that the whole embryo comes from the moyach of the father, then the moyach of the embryo for sure comes from the moyach of the father. Ever kunto is that your moyach, the Alter Rebbe uses it as a raya for the moyach of the father. It's a simon that you and the moyach of the father never really separate, which means that even though you're a son, you're really still your father. You're still the koyach of your father walking around, and he's still acting on you like he did when you were an embryo. And before you became an embryo. The tipper of his moyach, that's making you what you are, and that's even making your tziponayim. The Gemara says that the father gives the tziponayim. Says the Alter Rebbe, even after you're born, you keep getting your own fingernails from your own moyach, fabuas, because in your moyach is the father's moyach, which means that you connect back to your father. And it's an amazing inyan. And that's why we see, and on that, the Rebbe Rashab says in a place, it's also brought from other great Gedolei Yisrael, but the Rebbe Rashab says in a very characteristic way. And that's why the Gemara says in a certain place that Yofi koyach haben mi koyach ha'av. It's written in the Gemara that sometimes the son can be more powerful and indicate more koyches and more abilities than his father. In other words, he can be more powerful. Yofi koyach haben mi koyach ha'av. So the Rebbe Rashab says, no, that's not the pshat. He says that Yofi koyach haben, that is the fact that the ben can be yofi in his koyach, he can be more developed even than the father. Where does that come from? It comes from the father. Yofi koyach ben mi'ha'av. In other words, that all the brilliance and that you show, even legabi your own father, that really comes from the father. Why? Because everything comes from the tip of his moyach, and your moyach, which is for sure from his moyach, min motas mina, the two fit together very nicely. Your moyach is now feeding your tziponayim, is a sign that originally, if you're just a madrega of tziponayim, where did you come? You came anyway from the moyach of Diyah. It's an amazing thing, which for a Musa Haskel, which comes out that if you're whatever you are is really your father. Everything is really dependent on him, and his father was dependent on his father. His father was dependent on his father. So you go back. It's the old idea of what they call family tree. You know, it's not by any means a small lineage. And with that, it's understandable many inyanim. Oh, that's why we suggest that the Alter Rebbe puts in that twist. He brings a right from the ben to what the Gemara said, or he brings as a right what he says about the ben from the Gemara, which is talking about the father's brain giving into the tziponayim. It's really an amazing thing. Gidim atoms with tziponayim, or kamesh kasu bi'eit chayim. And oh, wow, I didn't realize we'll have to stop. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were running over the time. Okay, so Be'ez Hashem will be mamshik tomorrow.